Thank you everyone so very much for joining us today. This is a must-have conversation we call the Great ReEvaluation, focusing our attention on why now is a time for every event planner to dive deep into an event program and supplier assessment. So here's what you can expect today during our conversation together. We'll start by asking our CEO, Sean Combs, a few questions that are focused on synergies and why team dynamics are important in the restart of our industry. Then we'll move into the event marketer's self-assessment, where we get to chat with our creative director, Clint Han, and learn why it's essential for every event marketer to assess their event program. And finally, we'll end with sharing some ideas with our VP of Sales and Account Services that we think would really help streamline your process in finding an event supplier that is aligned with your goals and values. Throughout the conversation, we will be popping in a few poll questions between the speakers and to end the conversation with a 15-minute Q&A. Liz, our marketing manager, is behind the scenes running the chat. So if you have any questions for our speakers, don't be shy, ask away. With that said, let's dive in. Our first speaker is Sean Combs, CEO and President of Steelhead Productions. But before we get into that, Sean, let's start with a poll.
Oh, yes.
So here's the first question. Has your supplier team dynamic changed? Curious what everyone has to say about that. All right, poll is closed. And it looks like 64% of you guys said that yes, it has changed. So with that said, Sean, let's talk a little bit about, let's dive into the first question. We recently put together a free resource for event managers on why team synergies are an important part of choosing a partnership. So how do you, as leader and CEO of Steelhead Productions, explain to clients the value of team synergy in business-to-business relationships?
Well, I mean, the poll sort of validates why we're even having this conversation, right? So the answer, though, is really that, you know, brands don't work together. People do, right? And so Steelhead, we support brands, but ultimately we're working with people, event managers. And so as you saw in the poll, I mean, there's turnover. And so it's an interesting time in our industry in that, you know, we weren't slowed down, we were essentially shut down. And so like I can speak from Steelhead's perspective, you know, it was a really exciting opportunity to put the team back together again. We've got some, you know, so obviously some very familiar faces, but we really took the reset as an opportunity to look at our own team dynamic. And while we had an excellent team pre-pandemic, we couldn't be more excited about the team that we've assembled now. And then on our customer side, we are finding that they may not have the same sort of resources they had before. Maybe there was more people on their team. I mean, obviously a lot of, you know, companies couldn't hold on to a bunch of event marketing people when there's no events. And so the dynamics, you know, in terms of our own team and who we work with every single day really, really matter in our effort, in our ability to be really excited about solving problems for clients. But we're also noticing that their team dynamics have changed and they may need a level of support that they've never needed before. And we have to be flexible enough to respond to that.
Okay, the Great ReEvaluation is a three-pronged resource, one being the importance of trade show managers to reevaluate their event suppliers and partners along with their own event strategy and past performance. So I'm curious, what are the consequences to the event manager who does not reevaluate their event program along with their event suppliers?
Well, I think it could put them at a disadvantage. I mean, I think if you don't recognize that things have changed post-COVID, I think you know, it's fair to say that you'd be missing a really powerful opportunity. The other thing is I can tell you is that we're working with clients that have done this assessment. They have reevaluated their strategy. And so we know factually that it's happening. And so the suggestion is to take a look at your strategy in a post-COVID world. One of the things that we can thank COVID for, if there's at least one thing, is the value of the live event. You know, pre-COVID, it was always talked about, where does virtual, hybrid, where does all of this stuff fit, and how effective is it in terms of marketing, connecting with customers? We know now, not as effective as live marketing events, live trade shows. Should virtual be part of your marketing mix? Of course. I mean, moving forward, I mean, I certainly. But you know, that's one thing we can all be grateful for, is the value of trade shows have been established. Unfortunately, the prices have gone up. So, but yeah, people know now they're really valuable. But it also begs the question is, okay, how do you extract as much result and value out of those events? And that's where we beg the question. Like, let's take a look at your strategy.
Very true. And the resource that we put together uncovers a few common pain points within the industry, like bad customer service, surprise fees, and inflexibility. How can event marketers ensure that they do not experience these pain points when looking for a new supplier? And is there any red flags that they should be aware of when looking for a new partnership?
You know, again, I think that I would just invest the time with the, you know, with the relationships that you have on the supplier side. If they don't respond to that investment, I mean, I think that's when you really start to, you know, you need to, you know, look around. Again, I think that we've got to have conversations. We've got to have ongoing conversations. I mentioned earlier pricing. Our industry pricing is all over the place. We're seeing 45% increases in raw materials, 60% increases in transportation. And then, so how do we strategize, and how do we do what we can do from a design standpoint to mitigate those costs? How do we equip the event manager to have these conversations with their executive level team, you know, and give them the real data to support that? So I think there's a lot of, it's not, on the supplier side, it's not just about designing and deploying exhibits. It's a lot of it is sort of making sure that we communicate what we know and what we're learning on a daily basis about the dynamics in the event industry and how they change, and then equipping the event manager with that knowledge so that they can have really intelligent conversations inside of their organizations. And so that way everybody's expectations are aligned. I think one of the things that's the most difficult thing to do, whether you're working with Steelhead or any other supplier at this moment, is really, you know, how to get the most value engineering out of designs and things like that to mitigate costs, because they're all over the place.
Okay, and one final question for you, Sean. Why do you think companies are often reluctant to switch suppliers, even though they may not be 100% satisfied with the value and the service that they receive?
I mean, change is hard, and a lot of people don't like change. So if you're of the mindset that change represents a massive opportunity, then that's great. You'll lean into that, and look, you already know what you've got. So what does it hurt, you know, to take a look around? You know, we've had to do that. We wanted to be proactive on our restart with our own clients. I mean, our own clients expect us to evolve and always be at the forefront of what's going on. So, and I think Lance will speak to that a little bit, but, you know, we took this as a massive opportunity to look at everything we do, how we do it, so we can be as responsive and as innovative as possible. But people don't make those moves because it's hard. Just like any relationship, right? I mean, people stay in bad relationships all the time. It's not healthy, but it's just human behavior. But I think that ultimately is why people don't make the move. Sort of the devil you know, right, is better than the one that you don't type of deal. But yes, change is hard. But it's also, like I said, it could be a massive opportunity as well.
I like how you said that. With that, let's go into our next speaker. He's Steelhead's very own creative director, Clint Han. Before I ask you the questions, Clint, let's jump into the second poll.
That sounds good.
Okay, exhibit strategy. How has your exhibit strategy and creative formula evolved since returning from the pandemic? Or has your exhibit strategy and creative formula evolved since returning from the pandemic? Anybody want to talk to that question a little bit while we wait for the answers?
They'd rather see the answers first.
Yeah. The answer is
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
70%. Great.
Good.
Which is awesome. So let's dive into our first question for Clint, right? The event marketing self-assessment is designed to help marketers reflect on their overall event program performance. So Clint, let me start by asking, what was the inspiration for the event marketer self-assessment that sparked the need for this conversation?
Yeah, the self-assessment has been evolving, for a long time now. But the genesis of it was our creative team really wanted to go to one of our largest shows in person and really kind of get a feel of how everything has evolved coming out of the pandemic, and what companies are doing to make their brand presence known on the show floor, what the attendees are doing from a traffic flow standpoint, understanding general sessions to entrances, and really getting tactile with how attendees are moving through the space, and then kind of getting more granular with messaging, engagement, and the use of technology. We kind of had laid out these categories that we wanted to use as the baseline for us to kind of have a systematic way of reviewing all of these different companies and competitors on the show floor to the spaces that we were primarily working on. From there, as we came back and reviewed with our team, all these insights came out, and it just kept evolving from there, and it was just like really exciting. So it just kind of ballooned and became more encompassing, and we found the value in these conversations, and we thought that our team, or the event marketers, would find value in it as well.
Excellent. And thank you to your team for doing all that work, because this is a great topic, and the resources are available for free, the event supplier assessment along with the event manager's self-assessment. So let's dive into the second question. Why is the event marketer's self-assessment important, and what can marketers look forward to after completing the assessment?
Yeah, so why is it important? I think just like our team, I think it's important to challenge your creative philosophy, what you were doing pre-COVID to what you're doing now, to be able to really take pause and challenge those strategies and see if you're still aligned, or if things need to pivot and evolve. And the second part of the question was, what can they expect to receive in return? Well, we would love to talk with you. We would love to, give our best insights, because we have so many people going to different shows and getting exposure to all these different industries and collecting ideas. So as you get to take pause and assess yourself, you're also going to get our assessment based off of your answers. So knowledge is power, and expect a nice report from us to try to help you be as successful as possible.
Excellent. And then the self-assessment is conducted of 12 modulars. I'm not going to go through all 12 right now. You can download the resource and check those out for yourself. But which out of the 12 are your favorite, and why?
My favorite would probably have to be engagement. I've always been really interested in the strategies leading up to the show, how you're engaging with your audience at the show, and then what are you doing post-show to stay engaged with them? And as Sean said, virtual environments hasn't replaced live events, but it is a expanded portion of this industry that needs to be considered. So engaging with your audience outside the show in a virtual environment, and making sure that you're on the forefront of the new Web3, where the industry is going in the future, coupled with the in-person events and how those intertwine, I think is absolutely fascinating. And I think that's the part that excites me the most.
Okay, excellent. And then you kind of touched base a little bit on this question earlier, but how do marketers and their team go about making the changes today to their event program based on the results they get from the self-assessment?
I would say engage with your creative team, making sure that where your priorities are aligned with the strategies that are being implemented for your design, for your space, for your marketing, the best way to start is to have a conversation, honestly.
Yeah, and if you want to have the conversation, feel free to reach out to any of us or visit our website. There's a contact form in there where you can kind of let us know what your specific needs are, and anyone from the team would gladly help. So with that, thank you, Clint. Please stick around as we have some Q&A after we speak with Lance, which introduces our next speaker, Lance Randall, VP of Sales and Account Services. And Lance, we've heard a little bit of heard from Sean regarding team synergies and why the team dynamics are important. Clint shared his thoughts on the importance of a self-assessment from a creative perspective. Now let's talk a little bit about the event suppliers and their role in a successful event program. Why is right now the time to assess your marketing strategy and identify if your vendors are truly aligned with your brand's marketing mission?
Thank you, Omar. Well, first of all, a lot of things have changed, obviously. In the last couple of years, I mean, Sean touched on it, the poll, the poll actually quantifies for us that a lot has changed internally with different suppliers. Strategies have certainly changed. We've evaluated not only our employees but our suppliers. Just so much has changed, and the strategies of our clients are changing. There's still some companies that are yet to come back from COVID. And the competitive landscape has changed. One thing that was interesting was, when we first came back, there was a lot of clients that were trying to really tiptoe into coming back to live events because they just weren't quite sure. And there are many, many industry leaders, and which was probably the prudent thing to do, right? Because we didn't exactly know what was going to happen. Well, there was also some companies that really looked at that as like a huge opportunity to compete with their competitors for the first time because they just couldn't do that before. And that's one thing that COVID did, is it kind of leveled the playing field, at least for a period of time, right? So some of the industry leaders scaled down, some of the companies that were just getting going, had an opportunity to compete. And so they used that. The other thing is, I think event managers and event professionals, they're being tasked with doing these things responsibly and making sure that they are getting a great value and there's a measurable return and that sort of thing. There's a lot of pressure on them to do that. So it just seems really fitting, to come back from COVID, this sort of time, to just really evaluate and do a complete table reset.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Before I ask you any more questions, let's dive into our third poll. Supplier Network. Have you already completed an evaluation of your supplier network? If not, we have one available.
Okay.
Okay. So 67% have not completed an evaluation of your suppliers, which is important to do, right? So let's get into it a little bit, Lance, regarding this topic. Event managers are under a lot of pressure to produce successful events. Understanding their goals is crucial for suppliers. But why is it important for suppliers to understand event marketing goals or event marketers' goals and provide innovative engagement points for the brand activation?
Well, that poll just said change is hard. Sean mentioned that earlier. So, I mean, it's paramount that you understand that sort of stuff. And, there's no one size fits all approach to solving clients' needs and goals and objectives and that sort of thing. If you don't understand those things, it's really almost impossible to help them be successful. So it's really, we just have to understand that sort of information. And, the people that we work with, customers and prospects, they have to invest that sort of time and energy into it and sharing that information with us so that we can, then help them. not understanding their goals. I mean, that could be very costly. It can be costly for a few reasons. If you don't understand all of the goals and objectives, one, Sean touched on it earlier as well, costs, can get out of hand in a hurry. We're looking at raw materials costs, and I'm sure the many of the people that have joined today are experiencing this as well. But transportation, raw materials, we're finding the general contractor expenses have increased, exponentially. And then if you don't understand the strategy and what they're trying to achieve, that could lead to fewer meetings. It can lead to fewer leads, fewer sales, just a flat out terrible return on the investment. So if you understand all of that, it just helps everyone be that much more successful.
And you touched base a little bit regarding my next question here, but what is the immediate risk of a supplier not understanding the event manager's goals?
I mean, it's like I said, it could be very costly. You just have to have alignment just in general. We talk about it a lot at Steelhead with internal meetings, external meetings. It can waste time. And one of the things that, we certainly can't get back at Steelhead, it's a core value, but you can't get more of it. And so, if you don't understand those things from the get, you might end up having to do that thing over and over again. And, we talked about when we got on here today, most people are going from meeting to meeting to meeting already. And you don't have a lot of time to waste.
What should event marketers look for in a partnership? And do you think that having a personal relationship with the supplier is important?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, do some research. I mean, if you've been in this industry for a while, you have other partners, other suppliers, ask them, get referrals in this business. While it's a very, very large industry, it's also pretty tight knit, and a lot of people know one another. So do some research, understand, get an understanding of kind of their reputation. And by that, are there company awards? Are they great employers? Have they been fast growing? You could look at tenure of executives and other people in key positions, whether it be creative or account management. The people that you're going to work with. When you do engage, and then when you do engage with them, what's that interaction look like? Are they quick to respond? Just understand the process. What else? How quickly are you getting information that you need from them? Is that timely? Those sorts of things. If those aren't happening quickly, if you're waiting on things early on in the process after you have, reached out to suppliers, I mean, that some suppliers, that could be, a red flag. Do your values align with one another? That sort of thing. I think your second question was, is it important?
Is a personal relationship important?
Yeah, I mean, I think all relationships are important. Personally, professionally, I think they're paramount. At least, I know for myself, and I'm sure most people that are here right now, when you're evaluating a new relationship, whether it be a friendship or whatever, you like to make sure that you share similar values, similar goals, that sort of thing. So the other thing is, you're going to spend an incredible amount of time with the supplier. Trade shows, it takes a lot of resources to get these things pulled off, and you should get to know them and enjoy working with them, and make sure, we're going to do really, really, difficult work at times. We invest a lot of time, and I like to do that not only with the people that I work with on a daily basis, but with the clients and prospects. I mean, it's a little bit of a vetting process both ways, right? I mean, you need to make sure that there's a good fit. The other thing I would say that maybe we could have talked about earlier is that, there's a good chance you go through the evaluation process And you may find that your current supplier is the best supplier, and that's fantastic. But at least you've looked, at least you've thought about it, and are there other ways to do things? And I just want to be clear that, you know, sometimes the people that you're working with already are the best fit.
Very well said. And my final question for you, Lance, is kind of in general, right? What are exhibit houses doing to provide innovative and creative solutions that are unique to event managers' needs and goals?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I don't know that I can answer how all exhibit houses, what they're doing in particular. But what I would say is, if there was a silver lining with COVID, it was that we got to evaluate all facets of the business. And not only people, but processes. How are we going to improve? We had a little time on our hands to figure this sort of stuff out and improve some things. And so, you know, what we did is, so we went through and evaluated, especially the touch points with clients. And one of the things that we came out with is, like, how can we get things back in front of our clients faster? And people always want to see creative. And so we'd had this creative process that we've been using for a very long time. And, you know, it might take, the initial time might take 7-10 days, something like that. Well, we decided, what happens if we get them information much quicker? And we challenge creative with this, right? Because creatives want more time, right? They got to think about this stuff. It's got to, you know, it takes time for great design. Well, we thought, what if we could get something in front of them faster, within 5 days? Now, maybe it's not a fully fleshed concept, but while things are fresh, while you're thinking about it, what if you got something in front of them? It doesn't have to be fully figured out, but we could get feedback faster. You know, the other thing we were learning as we're coming back is we're getting shorter timelines. And so it was kind of a result of doing that. So that coupled with some operational things were really, really important. You know, we refined what we call the proven design process even further, where we gather, you know, we look to understand strategic objectives, what success looks like, all of that sort of stuff. And then we start talking about the tactical requirements, rather than, you know, like when I started in this business, it was all, you get on the phone and you would talk, well, how many demos do you need? What's the meeting space? And without understanding strategy. And so I think we took it to a higher level, and we got more strategic and started to understand needs and objectives and that sort of thing. And I believe that's when the magic happens. So, and we do this each and every time we work with a client or prospect, because we're not afraid of change, and we want our clients to change and evolve. I think it's very, very important. So
I think it's fair too, just to tack onto that real quick. You know, if you're working with your current exhibit provider, ask them, hey, what's changed since you guys got back? I mean, I don't know that we do a great job of of even informing our own clients all the things we have changed. But just hearing Lance speak about it makes me think that we probably need to do a better job about that. But if you are assessing your current provider, just ask them, you know, because I'm telling you, I don't know how any exhibit company comes back from the pandemic unchanged, right? So whether it's personnel, process, pricing, lead times, capabilities,
right,
constraints, you know, what are they? How is your change? You know, how is your company changed? So I know how that might affect me as an event manager. Maybe.
Very well said. Thank you, gentlemen, for the insight and for answering these questions. Let's dive a little bit into some Q&A. Elizabeth, do we have some questions in the chat?
Yeah, we have one for Clint. So as a designer, how important are general design trends in the trade show environment?
They're paramount. General design trends, we love looking outside of our industry. In particular, you know, when I talk about engaging the audience, you know, I find a lot of inspiration from like museums where they're explaining, you know, scientific concepts to children, how they're breaking it down and making it a hands-on experience. For product design, I love looking at retail and, you know, window displays and whatnot. So I mean, there's so many design trends outside of our industry that so greatly affect what we do on the trade show floor. So I think it's extremely important, and it's fun kind of seeing industries cross and seeing them evolve and bounce ideas off each other. I love that.
Nice. Next one we have is when Steelhead conducts reevaluations for vendors and suppliers, what are some specific values that we look for?
Lance might be able to answer part of this on the client services side. I would say organizationally speaking, well, one, Steelhead we're a certified B corporation. A lot of people don't know what that means, but basically we run this triple bottom line in terms of our people, the planet, and our profitability. And so we're looking for alignment with other companies. Do they have sustainability initiatives? Do they, are they an inclusive provider? I mean, we just want to align with organizations that have similar values. And then from a very tactical level, I think Lance can speak to, we rely on a lot of vendors to pull this off.
Yeah.
And he might be able to speak to things like, are you responsive? And
well, I think, when we're talking to specifically like new suppliers, we want to understand how we're going to be supported. What does the day-to-day stuff look like? What are the turn times look like? What happens on the weekend? As we all know, trade shows, this isn't a Monday through Friday thing. So when we're going to get a call at 5 a.m. Pacific time for something that's happening on the East Coast, we need to know that, we're going to, have the support there. So there's a number of things. I mean, as prices are getting elevated, you're looking to see what we can do. Are there alternative materials? Oftentimes that's what we're looking for as well, is there something else that we can do in exchange, for what we've used previously?
All right, we have another one speaking about budgets. What if your budget hasn't increased from the pandemic?
Yeah, I could take that. So if the budget hasn't changed, make sure that you share the real number with your supplier, whatever that is, because they're going to have to get very, very creative in how they solve that. One thing you might want to do is you might want to downsize, depending on the size. Like if you say you're in a 30 by 40, could you go to a 30 by 30 and get the same thing? Could you do what you need to do with it inside that space? You could save concrete, you could save flooring, creative, everything that we design has an implication, right? You design something to 20 feet tall, you might have to have things rigged and picked and that sort of thing. So you have to work really, really closely with them to make sure that they can get that, understand the budget, and do their very best to solve it. Because right now, if you're trying to save 10% over what you did before, you probably got to cut 30 or 40% realistically, and that stuff's out of our control.
Yeah, and this kind of ties into the next question is, do we, internally predict for, Lance or Sean, do we predict that prices are going to stay elevated or go higher? What are we looking at?
Yeah, there's two sort of factors, right? I think on the labor side, the answer is yes, they're going to stay there. I mean, I don't see people giving that back, right? And most companies are having to be creative with how we attract talent, retain talent, things like that. We're seeing it on the union side. I mean, that money's not coming down. So I think on the labor side, they don't come down. I think on the commodity side, we already are seeing some of those come down, and hopefully suppliers will extend the lower prices to their customers. I know we're monitoring it all the time. But what Lance said is really important in terms of knowing that those things, labor, right? What we show a client design-wise drives all subsequent costs, right? And so we have now like this trilogy inside Steelhead with our estimators and our designers, and then our client services people, so we can create a feedback loop. We created a beautiful design and executed it on the floor a few weeks ago. It had this cantilevered ceiling. It hung out and kind of created a nice cantilever and light block for a theater area. Looked really cool. To tie that off, $4,800 to tie it off. So we have to ask ourselves as creatives, and is that worth it? It looks cool, right? And so we've created sort of this internal feedback loop because it's changing. Like that used to not be a big deal. We had two hanging signs quoted for a show that's happening right now in Las Vegas. The same signs that were deployed in 2019, the rigging costs are double. Same sign, double, not 30% more, not 50% more, twice as much, right? So yeah, I think these prices are going to be with us for a while.
Yeah.
And we need to inform the client so they can have those conversations with their stakeholders and their decision makers as well, because you're being handcuffed as an event manager if you've been given a flatline budget or a 10% increase in this environment. You are disadvantaged.
For sure. And you touched on it a little bit, just how we're so connected in here interdepartmentally. So we have a question is, are you able to discuss your process and what we do to ensure that our events will be successful?
Want me to take that?
Yeah, we have a process.
Well, we do have a process. It takes between 60 and 90 minutes to invest that amount of time. I think if you'd like to learn more about that, we could probably schedule some time with Omar. There's a follow-up email. He can share more of that, but it's a very structured process that goes through this discovery process where we understand, why are you going? What success look like? What do you want people to say about you? You know, when the event's over. The thing that happens that I find a lot of times, especially with new prospects who haven't gone through it with us before, is because we ask so many questions and ask things that maybe people don't think about, it gets you to think a little bit differently, and you may not actually have the answers to those questions right now, and that's completely okay. We feel like it's you know, incumbent upon us to challenge you a little bit and push you outside the comfort zone, but it makes you think differently and go back to your organization and ask some questions to the sales team, the marketing team, you know. And when you spend that amount of time and you understand all of those things, and then you figure the tactical stuff is really simple: storage, meetings, product displays, demos, etc. But if you really understand the objectives and goals and success and what those feelings are like if you almost envision what a perfect show is like and that feeling, I think it can be really, really special.
Start there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then reverse engineer. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And I think we have time for this last question. Speaking about switching suppliers, if that's something you're looking to do, it's a lot of work. So how would we suggest, you know, someone to get started if they're looking for someone new to work with?
It is a lot of work. And so I feel you on that. I think if you're going to make a switch, be clear why you're switching, right? So what is it that you're leaving, and what is it that you're working toward, right? And so if you're clear about your motives, and then you can also be clear with your new supplier about the expectations. But I think the first thing is a strategy. It's like, you know, part of the opportunity of switching suppliers is also just switching, you know, your strategy and your tactics around let's say you own an exhibit, for example. And switching suppliers, you might think, okay, first thing I got to do is transfer all of my assets to the new co. Well, I don't know, maybe let's talk about that exhibit. Should we incur cost to move it across the country or down the road? You know, if that's not part of the strategy. We have a pretty clear-cut onboarding process, and I think most exhibit suppliers do, and it kind of starts with that, like, what do you own and what's your show schedule and things like that. I can't give you sort of a boilerplate answer because every program is different and unique. And we also have to find out, what are your team dynamics? Are we supporting you, or are we supporting you and Sally on the East Coast? And, you know, how would, you know, we have our process on how we generate work, but how do you like to work? And so I think some degree of flexibility would be an important thing to try to find. Does your new supplier, for all the things they do have figured out, are they also flexible?
For sure.
But I empathize.
Yeah. I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Omar, what else you got for us?
I have one final question to see and anyone can really take this one on, but where do you guys see the trade show industry changing, or how do you see the trade show industry changing in the next 5 years? Is it more tech? Is it more sustainability? Is it what exactly do we think it's going to be in 5 years?
I think we all probably think different things or similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, like the examples you gave, I think is all of that. I mean, tech in terms of, I mean, you can look at that in a number of different ways, but as I mentioned at the onset, right, the value of face-to-face marketing, live marketing has been reestablished due to COVID. Now, that's not to say that virtual and these other technologically driven solutions aren't going to become even more and more valid and relevant. So I see more of an integration with sort of the live and the integration of technology. Sustainability is just a big one. I know it's a big one for us. It's our industry. Creating temporary environments can be very, very, energy intensive and wasteful. It doesn't need to be, but I think I'm hopeful that people will continue to innovate on how to make those sort of a lower impact event. But in 5 years, I mean, I think we're already seeing it. Attendance is starting to get back to pre-pandemic levels at these shows, and so I think the growth in the use of live events is only going to get stronger.
And to piggyback off that, Sean, I also see experiential marketing gaining a bigger foothold in our industry. That has already been such a prominent thing, and I only see that continuing.
Most definitely.
Okay. Thank you guys for the time. Thank you everybody for joining the conversation today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, check out our website if you're interested in learning a little bit more about us and what we do, and how we can possibly help you out on the trade show floor. With that, there will be a follow-up email after this conversation, after we end this call, with meeting links and a few resources available to you that are free. We definitely encourage you to check that out. If you have any questions regarding the self-evaluation or the supplier assessment, please reach out. We'd love to chat and answer any questions that come up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Have a
guys.
beautiful day, and we look forward to talking to you guys soon.
All right. Take care.